urban STEM teachers' social emotional competencies and teaching efficacy in a post-pandemic working space. And this research explores the evolving challenges and opportunities for middle and high school level STEM educators in urban settings, especially in the aftermath of the COVID-19 pandemic, which has redefined educational dynamics worldwide. Yeah. And let's begin with English learners in the US. As you may all know, English learner students are usually defined as students who attend a US school that do not primarily speak English and need support to learn the academic content due to limited proficiency in spoken and/or written English, so that to be successful in an English language classroom. And public schools in the United States have experienced an influx of students who are English learners. They are kind of the largest and fastest growing student group. They are a diverse group of students with heterogeneous backgrounds, and they are more likely to drop out from schools with lower rates of college attendance than those mainstream students. And research has indicated that there is a persistent big achievement gap between English learners and their non-English learner peers, especially in STEM subject-related areas. So what are the potential reasons for this gap? In STEM subject areas, the unequal access to the instruction and resources for English learners may result in the underperforming of their STEM achievement. Additionally, a lack of adequately trained STEM teachers for English learners further worsen this issue. So to provide some context, urban STEM teachers face unique challenges such as resource disparities, high student-teacher ratios, and diverse student populations. The pandemic intensified these challenges while also exposing a critical need for social emotional learning competencies. Research shows that social emotional competencies not only help teachers manage stress, but also improve their teaching efficacy, student engagement, and overall classroom environment. And my study presented here today explores these connections in a post-pandemic landscape. So in order to reduce teachers' stress in a high turnover rate, and better develop teachers' competencies in helping students in social emotional learning and supporting them to be successful both academically and socially, the purpose of this study is to investigate the current status of U.S. urban STEM teachers' social emotional competencies, their teacher self-efficacies, and peer engagement in social emotional learning. And also, this study investigated the differences in teacher self-efficacy by their personal and school characteristics. Also, it investigated the interrelationship between STEM teachers' professional development engagement in social emotional learning, their abilities in applying knowledge and skills in specific social and emotionally challenging situations, and their teacher self-efficacy. The theoretical framework. So to guide my study, I draw on two primary frameworks that intersect to address the core of this study. The first was the teacher efficacy framework, which is derived from the Bandura's social cognitive theory, and the teacher social emotional competency framework, which builds on Castle's 5 dimensions of social and emotional learning in the Jennings pro-social classroom mediation model. So for teacher efficacy framework rooted in social cognitive theory, this framework emphasizes the dynamic interplay between teachers' beliefs and their ability to influence student outcomes and the contextual factors shaping their teaching environment. Teacher efficacy is critical in navigating challenges in post-pandemic classrooms, and particularly for diverse learners, such as English learners in class. The importance of STEM teacher self-efficacy is well documented in the literature already, with studies highlighting its significant impact on both teaching outcomes and teacher well-being. Research also shows that higher teacher self-efficacy positively influences student achievement in STEM subjects and enhances teaching performance. There are fruitful research tackling on these kind of research areas. And also, STEM teachers with strong self-efficacy report lower levels of stress and burnout rate greater job satisfaction and a stronger commitment to remaining in the profession. Well, these findings underscore the critical role of self-efficacy in promoting both effective teaching and teacher retention in STEM education. And next, for the teacher social emotional competency framework, it expands on these by incorporating CASEL's 5 core dimensions of social emotional learning, including self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, relationship skills, and responsible decision-making. So this further supported by Jenny's pro-social classroom mediational model. This model highlights how teacher well-being and social emotional competencies can create a supportive classroom climate that fosters both teacher and student success. Additionally, teachers' awareness of own emotions and emotion regulation skills and their awareness of other people's emotions and relationship management skills are two essential and prevailing strengths of teachers' social emotional competencies now. Teachers with high SEC have the ability and the knowledge to regulate their emotions and behavior, find solutions to problems, and interact with others effectively in social and emotional situations in teaching context. Therefore, socially and emotionally competent teachers are better able to create a positive, inclusive, supportive, and a well-organized classroom environment, and to be more responsive to meet student needs with strong social skills. And also, we've identified a research gap. Many studies have utilized emotional intelligence, which is called EI, as a key indicator for assessing teachers' social emotional competencies by the time we conduct this study. However, the use of EI as a measure of teachers' SEC is too broad, since an individual's SEC should be measured in context specifically, while another aspect, like self-reported measures, are commonly used in existing literature, such as like the emotion regulation questionnaire, the interpersonal competence questionnaire, and the trait emotional intelligence questionnaire. There's a growing need for more objective measures of teacher SEC with a context-specific design in empirical studies. So the present study aims to contribute to the literature by examining teachers' social emotional competencies under a specific teaching context with an objective measurement of teachers' social emotional competency. And next, we're going to review literature quickly, because as we've discussed the background and context of our study, we will just quickly dive deeper into the existing body of the knowledge, that how this knowledge informed the present study. In terms of investigating the relationship between teacher social emotional competencies and self-efficacy, research already found that STEM teachers' social emotional competency is playing an important role in determining their teaching efficacy. Teachers' ability to effectively regulate their emotions is also associated with their self-efficacy beliefs. And on the other hand, research shows that strong teacher and student relationships are highly associated with teachers' efficacy in classroom management and the student engagement. Well-developed relationship management skills definitely help teachers develop and maintain caring and supportive relationships with their students. Research has also provided that specific PD training of social emotional learning has a profound impact on teachers' emotional exhaustion, stress, well-being, and their social emotional competencies. However, research regarding the impact of developing teachers' social emotional competency related to PD training on teacher efficacy shows mixed findings. You can see the example I list on the slide. In 2017, Janice and her colleagues examined whether a PD training program called CARE, which is a very famous program, which is a mindfulness-based PD program, it found no significant impact on the improvement of teachers' teaching efficacy. However, in a more recent study conducted by Ansley and other scholars, they examined the impact of a 4-week online PD program designed for promoting teachers' social emotional competencies specifically. And the result of their study showed that the participants demonstrated increases in social emotional competencies, personal accomplishment, and the improvement of their teacher efficacy. Therefore, a mixed finding of the effect of social emotional learning related PD training on teacher efficacy arises in the research. Moreover, teacher self-efficacy has been found to vary by their personal characteristics. For example, in terms of teachers' social demographic background, the findings on the ethnic variations in teacher self-efficacy remain mixed in the literature. While some reported like non-white has higher TSE than white, and some reported no significant differences between the two groups. And in terms of their language spoken status, in comparison with monolingual English speakers, teachers speaking more than one language are more likely to have higher teacher self-efficacy. These are found by the existing literature. Furthermore, teacher certification route, as there have been a growing number of secondary STEM teachers entering the teaching profession via the alternative certification programs. Research frequently considers whether teacher certification routes might be a factor in predicting teacher self-efficacy in classroom teaching, so as to impact their teaching effectiveness. There was evidence showing that alternatively certified teachers have demonstrated decreased teacher self-efficacy and its impact on teaching effectiveness. However, the research did not clearly indicate the secondary STEM teachers certified via the alternative route would demonstrate a lower level of self-efficacy than those certified through the traditional teacher preparation program. So the current study aims to add to the literature by determining whether STEM teachers' teacher self-efficacy varies significantly depending on their certification path. Additionally, as teachers' educational level seems to be associated with their efficacy level. So as a result, like in order to promote the internal consistency of our study, we added STEM teachers' educational level as a covariate in the further analysis. So that's part of the review of the literature. On the slides, these are the specific research questions. So given the mixed findings, I just elaborated about the effect of PD in social emotional learning on teacher self-efficacy and the chaotic circumstances during the post-pandemic. Adequate professional and social emotional support for teachers are needed in order to increase their productive thoughts and reduce negative emotions. However, little research has investigated whether in-service teachers receive adequate training in this area and how the amount of PD engagement in such a topic would impact their teacher self-efficacy, specifically for STEM teachers of English learners in the urban area teaching context. Additionally, as I've been discussed, most studies use the teacher's self-reported measures for assessing their social emotional competency, or simply use emotional intelligence as an alternate. Assessing teachers' social emotional competency objectively by specific teaching situation or judgment test would be more effective. So here are the three main research questions on the slide. First, what is the overall level of secondary STEM teachers' social emotional competencies, teaching self-efficacies, and the PD engagement in social emotional learning? And do secondary STEM teachers' personal characteristics such as race, ethnicity, language spoken status, and certification route impact their overall teacher self-efficacy? Third, does the PD engagement in social emotional learning moderate the relationship between secondary STEM teachers' social emotional competencies and their self-efficacy after controlling for the impact of teacher personal characteristics? And you can see figure 2 on this slide, which is a conceptual moderation model of this study and clearly define the relationship in research questions we're going to explore in the present study. The next part, I'll go over the methodology of this study. So first, just participant recruitment. This study received initial approval from Texas A&M University IRB in February 2022, and the questionnaires were built in Qualtrics and they were sent by bulk emails to urban school secondary STEM teachers, like both middle and high school teachers in teaching like STEM subject areas. The first email was sent out in March 22nd and followed by 2 reminders, and the survey closed in May 22nd. Well, the email list was created based on the following information. Like, we found the teacher's email address on the school directory, and they were all from urban schools with more than 30% of students who were underrepresented minorities, like English learners and or like Hispanics. These information were also gathered from their school profile. And we got a total of 521 responses from those urban schools in Texas. And then we did our sampling screening. Included sample has to meet like these certain criteria listed on the slide. So teachers who were fully certified in teaching a STEM subject by the time they were filling out this questionnaire in an urban school in Texas, like Houston, Dallas, San Antonio, and Austin metropolitan areas. And more than 60% of their school students are from underrepresented minorities or are Hispanics. And more than 60% of their classes are made up of English learners. So this information was gathered from an item from the questionnaire, help screening this information. So we got a total final sample of 307 respondents. We conducted power analysis. So based on the G-power, a sample size of 170 was good enough to find the impact of all predictors involved in the current study on and investigating teacher self-efficacy. Therefore, the current sample size is adequate to answer the research questions we proposed. And here's the sample characteristics in this table. As I mentioned, we got a total of 307 secondary STEM teachers in urban schools in Texas that all satisfied the inclusion criteria as I just explained. They were fully certified, working in public, middle, and high schools, serving large numbers of underrepresented minority students in the urban public school district in Texas. So the average age of the participants were around 35 years old, ranging from 21 to 60 years old. And their average teaching experience were about 7.5 years, ranging from 1 to 21 years. And participants, other personal characters, you can see here, like more than half of our participants were females, about 11% were bilingual, multilingual learner speakers or teachers, and about 74 were white, and more than 25 were non-white. We have about 80% of certified through traditional route, and the other 90% was certified through alternative program. And then about 28% had master or even higher level degrees, and 71 had bachelor or lower level degrees. And about their teaching subject distributions, about 47 taught math, 26% taught, 47 taught science, 26 taught math, and 18% taught technology. And about 8% taught like a multiple STEM subject by the time of filling out the survey. Like they probably were teaching science and math simultaneously at their school at the time. Yeah, here are just some sample characteristics. And about the instrument we used for conducting this study, so to assess those teachers' level of social emotional competencies and the teacher self-efficacy regarding our hypothesized moderation effect of PD engagement in social emotional learning during post-pandemic era. So this questionnaire, teacher social emotional skills and efficacy questionnaire, was used for measurement. The researcher in the expert panel developed this questionnaire based on different measures. So they simply pulled items from a frequently used measure of teacher self-efficacy in the literature, which was developed by Shannon Moran and Hoy in 2001. This is a widely used instrument about assessing teacher self-efficacy. And the objective measure of teacher social emotional competencies with situational judgment approach. And both of these instruments were assessed with good validity and reliability in the literature. And in general, this questionnaire was designed into 3 sections. The first part of the questionnaire was used for gathering participants' demographic information, including their gender, age, teaching experience, and like their certification route, PD engagement related to developing their social emotional competencies, etc. In the second and third parts were just the questionnaire about the assessment of their self-efficacy and their social emotional competencies, respectively. So from the established and standardized instrument used in the literature. In the next slide, I'll take you to explore more about the details for each measures we used. So the first is teacher self-efficacy. The third part, in the second part in the questionnaire. So teacher self-efficacy scale, the short form developed by Shannon Moran and Hoy in 2001 was used. This is a very widely adopted measure, assess teachers' self-efficacy. It has a total of 12 items on a 9-point Likert type scale and ranging from 1, nothing over, 5, which is some influences, to 9 point, which means a great deal. And it has 3 subscales, like teacher self-efficacy in classroom management, in student engagement, and instructional strategies. But for our current study, we use a sum score of the total 12 items in the analysis. And for social emotional competencies, the adapted English version of the test of the regulation in and understanding of social situation in teaching, which is called TRUST, for the US school context was used to assess teachers' social emotional competencies. This instrument is an objective evaluation that aims to assessing secondary level teachers' social emotional competencies with some real scenarios of social situations in teaching. It basically has 2 scales. One is emotion regulation, which has 7 items and some sub scenarios. And the other subscale is relationship management, which has 8 items. And this instrument has been assessed with good validity and reliability in the literature, and all items are measured by a 5-point Likert type scale ranging from 1 very ineffective to 5 very effective. The sum score for the entire instrument with a total of 15 items was used for the analysis. Well, you can see an example item here on the slide, and its scenarios as an objective evaluation instrument on this slide. So simply, Mr. Hall is a first-year teacher who has extensively prepared a lesson for his 9th grade class. However, the students do not engage in the lesson. Again, he is disappointed with their behavior and frustrated about the time he put into the planning. How effective would each of the following reactions to be improve Mr. Hall's feelings in the long term? And then there are following scenario items here. They can check the box in front of each options, and then there is kind of like a formula to calculate the final score of each respondent, and we used the final component score of both subscales based on the formula to do further analysis. And in terms of PD engagement in social emotional learning, this part was adapted from the teacher's social emotional learning attitude and school culture interview. 5 items that assessed about teacher PD engagement in social emotional learning during the past 24 months. And each item represents one area of social emotional learning based on Castle's model. So first, for example, during the past 24 months, have you ever had professional learning, like a workshop, training, or conference opportunities, like during your teaching career, emphasizes social skills, including understanding others' feelings and the skills needed to work in groups? 1 equals to yes, and 0 equals to no. This is kind of like a codification for the responses. The lower part on this slide is teacher personal characteristics, like the items we used for analysis and how we code them for further analysis. So basically, we code them all binary variables for following analysis, like 1 versus 0. Next is about data analysis. So data analysis approaches, we primarily adopted quantitative approach with descriptive statistics analysis, multiple regression, and the moderation. We conducted preliminary analysis for our sampling data set before conducting those kind of quantitative analysis. So the missing data was completed at random. And we did assumption checkings for conducting multiple regression analysis and also the moderation. You can see those kind of information on the slide. And also we reported standardized data to indicate the effect size of each predictors respectively. And specifically, both teacher self-efficacy and social emotional competency, these two measures were computed by centering the means in the regression model and moderation analysis to better estimate the prediction. Yeah. And exercise just the correlations between the included variables. I'll skip this part at this part of the preliminary analysis. Yeah, main analysis. So after preliminary analysis, then we conducted the main analysis for each research question. So for the first research question, descriptive statistics were just used to show the average score of the participants' current teacher self-efficacy and the social emotional competencies level, as well as their PD engagement or like involvement in social emotional learning during the post-pandemic era. And the number of participants, mean scores, standard deviations, minimum and maximum values of their scores, and the percentage of the value in each group are reported. And for second research question, we made the assumption that teachers' self-efficacy in STEM classroom is statistically different based on their personal characteristics, including their race or ethnicity, ability to speak more than one language, route to certification, and level of education. A multiple regression analysis was used as model 1, and in this model, it included teachers' personal characteristics as predictors, whereas like teacher self-efficacy score was the outcome variable. You can see the equation here. And for third research question, these question hypothesized that like the interaction, in fact, between STEM teachers' social emotional competencies and their PD experience in social emotional learning significantly impact their teacher self-efficacy after controlling for the impact of their personal characteristics. Therefore, the second multiple regression analysis, which is our moderation analysis, was conducted to answer research question 3, the second model here. It used the interaction between social emotional competencies and their PD engagement in social emotional learning during the past 24 months for predicting teacher self-efficacy, while controlling the impact of their personal characteristics. And a marginal mean plot was then used to demonstrate the interaction trend impacting the outcome variable, which you'll see later in the results part. Okay, results. This survey or questionnaire basically assessed our participants' teacher self-efficacy, social emotional competency, and their PD engagement in social emotional learning for STEM teachers from urban area, public middle, and high schools in Texas. And regarding STEM teacher status on the self-reported teacher self-efficacy, the data presented an average score of 65 points out of 108 points as a full score. And range from 64 to 99 points, with a median of 64, range from 46 to 99, with a median of 64 points. And according to the measure of teacher self-efficacy in the questionnaire, this mean score represents that STEM teachers' overall teacher self-efficacy level was at the medium level. And as the mean score may be impacted by some outliers, the median score has to reflect that more than half of the participating STEM teachers were not confident in their overall ability in classroom teaching, management, and student engagement. And regarding the respondents' current level of their social emotional competencies, the average score was 11.34, with a minimum score of 10 and a maximum score of 52.5. And the median score of their social emotional competencies was 20.5. This showed that more than 50% of the sampled teachers remained at a relatively low social emotional competency level during the post-pandemic era, as a full score of this scale was about 60 points. And in terms of the PD engagement in social emotional learning of the current sample teachers during the post-pandemic, about 52% of the participants reported having no PD engagement in social emotional learning, whereas 47% had PD experience in social emotional learning. And you can see the plot here, like this bar plot. Oh, yeah. So to be more specific, you can see more than 50% of sampled urban STEM teachers were not involved in PD regarding any of the 5 aspects in social emotional learning by the causal framework. And approximately 16% had a PD experience in one aspect of social emotional learning, and 26% of the sample teachers had participated in PD in relation to like 2 aspects of social emotional learning. And only about 5 of the sample teachers participated in 3 or more aspects of social emotional learning related topics during the post-pandemic era. So this finding provides evidence that the majority of the participants did not receive sufficient PD training in relation to social emotional learning. For the second research question, the multiple regression analysis was elaborated at each variable level. So you can see the table here. Race, ethnic background. According to this table, STEM teachers who are white were predicted to have a statistically significant higher teacher self-efficacy level than non-white teachers. Well, definitely controlling for the impact of teachers' language spoken status and other characteristics. And these findings indicate that teacher race or ethnicity background can explain a significant amount of variance in teacher self-efficacy with a median effect size. Because beta here equals to 0.34, representing a median effect size. So on average, white STEM teachers scored 76 points, higher than non-white teachers in teacher self-efficacy. And in terms of their language spoken status, similar results were found. STEM teachers who are bilingual or multilingual speakers were predicted to have a significantly higher teacher self-efficacy than those who are English and monolingual speakers. If we hold teachers' level of if we hold other characteristics constant. And you can see here it's a medium size effect size as well. It's greater than 0.1, like 0.1 is about small effect size. And in terms of their certification route, the findings also show that teachers who were certified by the alternative program were predicted to have a significantly higher teacher self-efficacy than those who certified through the traditional preparation program, with a medium effect size too. So this kind of information showing on the slides already, but you can see some are in line with our literature review, like those studies in the literature, but some are not in line with previous studies. We'll elaborate more in the discussion part. So the next part is about research question 3. So in this moderation analysis, it revealed that interactions between teachers' social emotional competency in their PD engagement or participation in social emotional learning during the past had a statistically significant enhancing effect on their teacher self-efficacy level, with a medium level effect as well, medium to high level, or medium to large level effect size. And you can see the plot. So these plot further show that the interaction between the marginal mean of the teacher SEC and PD engagement at each level. So you can see the blue line means they had no PD during the past 12 months, and the red line shows that they had PD experience in social emotional learning during 24 months. And so you can see the differences. So this plot definitely demonstrated that the effect of STEM teachers' SEC was enhanced significantly more on the improvement of their TSE when they were engaged in a certain amount of social emotional learning related PD trainings. Yeah, and here comes to our discussions. So first, we just want to quickly discuss the contribution to the literature. This is the first study to examine the interaction effect between like the social emotion teachers' level of social emotional competencies and their PD engagement and self emotional learning over an extended period of time on the STEM teacher self-efficacy. And with adoption of an objectively measured instrument and simultaneously taking the featured teacher's personal characteristics into consideration. And the findings also added to the literature by providing solid quantitative evidence supporting the importance of developing STEM teachers' social emotional competencies in their self-efficacies through appropriate PD training in social emotional learning and the need to consider teachers' personal characteristics when developing future like teacher training programs, professional learning opportunities. And we have some implications. The result of the descriptive statistics demonstrate a relative lack of PD engagement in social emotional learning among those urban area STEM teachers during the post-pandemic era. As indicated by a previous study, current STEM teacher PD is still dominated by content and the pedagogical topics. And our study supports the literature by providing evidence of a lack of participation in social emotional learning related topics. Moreover, the present study demonstrated that the social emotional competencies and the teacher self-efficacy relationships among urban middle and high school STEM teachers was significantly moderated by the teacher's PD engagement in social emotional learning with a medium to large impact size. And the effect of teachers' social emotional competencies on their self-efficacy level becomes stronger as their engagement in PD training related to social emotional learning increases. So this finding definitely backs up the positive effect of PD on TSE and shows how important it is to offer teachers more PD in social emotional learning. Additionally, like in middle and high school STEM subjects tend to be test-driven, and teachers suffered many difficulties and challenges from teaching virtually or in a hybrid format during the pandemic era and after. Also, like urban STEM teachers in the United States have high attrition and turnover rates, and also like higher pressure in the lower TSA level than teachers in non-urban areas identified by literature. So as social emotional learning cultivates the skills that people need to connect with others and get through challenges in life, adequate or sufficient like PD training and social emotional learning, it's definitely needed. Also, the result of this study showed that STEM teachers who are white were found to have a significantly higher TSE than their non-white counterparts in the urban school context. Previous literature also noted that the teacher racial ethnic differences existed in the TSE construct and demonstrated mixed findings in comparison between white and non-white teachers in their teacher self-efficacy levels. And the lower TSE of non-white STEM teachers found in this study may be due to like the small portion of non-white students taking class in person when schools reopened during the post-pandemic, like literature support in 2021. And also in Texas, for example, in the post-pandemic era, 75% of white students returned to school for in-person instruction, compared to only like 49% of Black students, 51% of the Latinx student, and 69% of the Asian student who stayed at home to learn online. And even though non-white teachers may use more culturally responsive practices in the classroom with non-white students, challenges they had teaching white students in person while helping non-white students learn online may have made them less confident in their ability to teach and engage their students very well in class. Also, echoing previous studies, STEM teachers who are bilingual or multilingual demonstrated a higher TSE than those who are monolingual English. Therefore, as practitioners, STEM teachers should be familiar with content-related terms that allow students to participate in rich discussion while elevating their understanding of concepts critical for text comprehension. Definitely, future teacher programs may need to develop STEM teachers' knowledge and skill in culturally responsive teaching to accommodate their students' needs. For sake of time, I'll go over next slides quickly. As being said, ongoing PD in social emotional learning should be provided to all STEM teachers because our findings are not in line with previous studies. The current study found that STEM teachers who received certification through alternative program had higher TSE than those who received certification through traditional programs. This could be because of STEM teachers from the alternative routes were a more diverse group in terms of age and ethnicity. And conventionally minded, alternative qualified STEM teachers may not have enough experience to meet the needs of their students, and they may not have formal training in teaching pedagogy and curriculum development, which may cause them to have lower efficacy. However, there's little research addressing the need to consider the development in TSE and the social emotional competency for those STEM teachers who were certified through traditional programs. Instead of giving alternative certified STEM teachers more like support at school, these findings raises concerns about like the development of TSE and skills to engage students socially and emotionally for those who receive certification through traditional programs at the same time, and teach STEM at urban secondary schools like ongoing PD for all STEM teachers. Well, last slide here, limitation and future directions. So first, people who took part in the present study were not chosen completely by stratified sampling approach. Even though like the people who were supposed to participate got emails asking them to, but some of the participants who took the survey shared the survey link with other teachers, like their colleagues, who were not on the email list for the present study. So as a result, the raw data included a number of participants who were not eligible to participate. So the research, like our team, then filtered the data by only include teachers who were fully certified. We do have an item in the questionnaire, and taught as STEM subject at an urban school, and also teachers who are eligible should report that more than 60% of their school students are from underrepresented minorities or are Hispanics, and more than 6% of their classes are made up of English learners, identified by an item in the questionnaire. So for future studies, it is important to manage the sampling issue to get more accurate results before sending out a bulk email to all kinds of different school districts. Second, the survey instrument was self-developed by the researchers team. So each measured construct was included based on different measures and pulled from other existing standardized instruments. As survey data were collected via email only and study adopted a cross-sectional design, further follow-up studies would be required to allow the causality inferences, like future research could like build upon this present study to conduct maybe like a PD intervention with best practices of social emotional learning to find out if there is a causal link between like PD in social emotional learning and the improvement of their social emotional competencies and self-efficacy. And moreover, the change in both social emotional competencies and TSE requires long-term observation rather than just a short-term monitoring or one-shot training. So future studies may consider adopting the randomized experimental design with longitudinal data. And third, though teachers' SEC level was measured objectively, the PD engagement in social emotional learning and TSE was still collected based on their self-reported data. So it is possible that teachers who choose to participate in the study differ in some aspects that were not assessed from those who did not. Therefore, it is really important to examine and consider other relative factors, both at teacher and school level in the future. And finally, due to TSE and SEC being both context or specific construct, this current study, the findings of the interaction effect and differences by teacher personal characteristics in this setting might not be generalizable to other specific contexts. So in the future, researchers may look at how the effect of PD in SEL on the relationship between teacher social emotional competency and TSE is different from teachers in urban and non-urban areas in other contexts. So they may also look at how these differences are affected by teachers' personal traits. And pretty much in my presentation today, thank you so much for your time. And this last page, I just want to give acknowledgement to my colleagues, co-authors, in my email address in case you have any further questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much.